Hi, welcome to Skip's Corner, where I cover Nashville's baseball history and events and introduce you to players, coaches, and other fans. Well, let me begin by saying if you listened to a podcast in 2022, thank you. If you haven't, they're all there, and you can certainly go back and look for them on Buzzsprout, or you can find them on your favorite podcast application. You can go to Apple or you can go to Spotify. Any of those will carry it. So if you have any trouble, let me know. I'll certainly try to steer you in the right direction. But I enjoy doing these. The intent is to give Nashville baseball history some significance in a way that people today would enjoy it, and for the future would enjoy those stories. This is just another means of publishing, as I think. And I think that if we can continue to keep those treasures somehow, either by the written word or by oral history, I think that we'll all be better off. And who knows who may be impacted by something that is said or some history that took place in Nashville, especially in baseball, that it would be of help to them and of service to them. And that's my intent. And now, going into 2023, I want to wish you a happy new year and tell you that I have been researching during the past weeks, during the Christmas holidays. I found that the 1963 Tri-State League, an amateur league in Nashville, was significant, along with the City League. But today I'm going to talk about the 1963 Tri-State League season, as requested by many old-timers who have become a member of the Old Timers Baseball Hall of Fame. Some of these names are recognizable, others are not. The newspapers make me look good. I'm not near as smart as Google search or the Nashville Banner or the Nashville Tennessean, as I can research pretty easily. But 1963 was the last year so far that the Nashville Banner has been placed online. So I just thought 1963, it was 60 years ago for 2023, and hopefully some of these names are recognized. On April the 30th, 1963, the Tri-State League, with 9 teams, announced a 26-game schedule. A new team, David Lipscomb, is made up of mainly of college players, while Nolensville combined forces with the 1962 College Grove entry. And Smyrna was considered to be a tough opponent because it would be stocked with some of the airmen from Seward Air Force Base and also college players from Middle Tennessee State College. Now, Commissioner Buster Boguskie had previously hoped to have had 10 teams, but 2 potential teams, McQuitty Printing and Triune, were early entries in the league, but pulled out. And then Greenbrier Lumber, the 1961 champion, was not fielding a team. Now, Boguskie announced that games were expected to be played under the lights at Shelby, Centennial, and Morgan Parks, with Monday and Thursday night games played at Smyrna, and Tuesday and Thursday night games played at Nolensville. Sunday games would be played at Neely's Bend, Millersville, Smyrna, Nolensville, Franklin, and Metro Parks Diamonds. Now, let me say as an aside to that, the number of parks that were available in those days, not many of them continue to exist. And it's kind of a sad testament, I think, about where we find places for kids to play baseball. There are a lot of teams, a lot of travel teams. I understand that. A lot of high schools have real nice facilities these days, but are there really that many places to play anymore? Now, to begin, these are the managers to begin the season for each club. Some of these, I think, stayed with their team, but I'm not sure all of them did. Henry Manise was the manager of the Neely's Bend team. Murray Neighbors of Madison Amusement. Harry Lillard of Nolensville. Doris Nairn of Smyrna. Don Tassie of Mayo Sausage, although I found that Erskine Collins called the team to practice in February or March, I think it was. And then there were 2 listed for Ray Batts Furniture, Charlie Gardner and Lefty Hardcastle. Billy Arms for Randall Phillips Builders. Joe Herbert for Franklin. And then Lipscomb didn't list one, but my guess is it would have been Ken Dugan. Now, as I said earlier, this was the 4th season for the Tri-State League, and the scheduled opening games were to happen on May the 5th, with Ray Batts Furniture and Mayo Sausage colliding at Shelby Park No. 1 at 2:30. Ray Batts would be led by pitcher Jimmy Patterson, along with an experienced outfield in Maurice Moffett, Corky Hartman, and Jimmy Joe Johnson. Now, let me say that when I mentioned earlier I was going through the Banner and the Tennessean, not all of them listed players. Early in the season, there were a lot of other things going on, like the Nashville Vols were playing. And as the season went on into July and August, it seemed like the sports writers picked up on more stories. But early in the season, especially, they didn't always list the first name of players. Well, anyway, let me go back to the opening weekend. Ray Batts won the opener over Mayo Sausage 6-2. And other season opening games included Randall Phillips Builders over Franklin 14-2, Neely's Bend over Madison Amusement 8-7 in 14 innings, and Smyrna won over Nolensville 8-6. Now, skipping ahead because there were so few mentions, usually the newspaper would say the Tri-State League schedule for tonight is, but there wouldn't always have a write-up. And that may have been a problem because sports writers had other assignments. But let's skip ahead to June the 30th, 1963, when the Tri-State League held its All-Star game. Now, the All-Stars won over Randall Phillips Builders 2-0 in the 7-inning All-Star game at Sulphur Dale. Jimmy Ferguson, who drove in both runs for the winners, and Randall Phillips, Lee Perry, were chosen co-MVPs in the game. Perry held the All-Stars to only 2 hits, one a double by Ferguson with 2 men on base, and Cordell Jones a single. The game ended on a double play with Phillips having the bases loaded in the 7th with 1 out before a victory to Lillard to Bennett twin killing ended the game for the All-Stars. Now, with only 9 men, manager Bill Arms' Randall Phillips team had won the right to face the All-Stars when Don Carr's infield hit sent James Potts home with the winning run in the 3rd inning of a sudden death playoff. Arms was even forced to use Eddie Phillips in the game, who is literally half blind and wore a patch over one eye and shouldn't have even been playing. Now, here's the All-Star team. I find this interesting, and you'll recognize some of these names if you've been around Nashville baseball long enough. The catchers were chosen as Jerry Pearson from Mayo's, Dick Markison from Phillips, Herbert Spears from Madison, and the pitchers were Lee Perry from Phillips, Larry Hasty from Lipscomb, Tom Fletcher from Lipscomb, Jamie Tillman from Ray Batts, Gene Smith from Nolensville, Burl White from Mayo's, and Cleabert Hiles from Smyrna. Now here's the infield selection. Bobby Bennett from Mayo's at first base, Jimmy French, Ray Batts, second base, Jimmy Malone, Madison Amusement at shortstop, Jimmy Ferguson from Ray Batts at third, and Ken Victory from Smyrna and Harry Lillard from Nolensville as utility players. Now, the outfield selections for All-Stars were Don Carr from Phillips, Corky Hartman from Ray Batts, Cordell Jones from Madison Amusement, Tony Hooper from Lipscomb, and John Burke from Smyrna. Now, on July the 1st, 1963, after that All-Star game, the Tri-State League action resumed as Tom Fletcher scattered 10 hits in Lipscomb's 6-1 win over Smyrna, as Ronnie Puckett homered with 1 man on the 4th inning. And Tad Gardner got 3 hits and scored the only run for Smyrna. A couple of weeks later, on July the 14th, Randall Phillips retained their first-place hold in the standings, even though they were rained out of their game against Franklin at Springfield, as Ray Batts dropped a 4-1 decision to Mayo Sausage behind the pitching of Jim Herndon. Batts was looking for its 12th win in 15 games and was tied with Phillips Builders going into the day's schedule after beating Madison Amusement 12-0 on Thursday, July the 11th, to tie them for the league. In that game, Duke Shackelford, a BGA grad, struck out 14 of the Madison players in the 5-inning win. Now listen to this. He struck out 8 consecutive batters after allowing the first 2 batters to reach base on an error and a bunt single. And then in the 3rd inning, with 2 out, a bad hop single to short allowed another runner. And then he struck out 6 in a row before the final infield out. That was a pretty special performance by Duke Shackelford. In another game on the 11th, Gene Smith held Franklin to 1 hit in Nolensville's 9-0 win. And the newspaper says that Phillips had lost many of its standout players who had been on alert when they went back to Fort Campbell. July the 16th, 1963, Jerry Hale scattered 11 hits to lead Mayo Sausage to an 11-4 win over Neely's Bend behind the solid hitting of Tommy Toombs, Charles Woodall, and Eddie Wells. And curfew stopped the Franklin and Randall Phillips game with a score knotted 3-3 that day. Randy Miles for Randall Phillips and Bud Mayfield for Franklin were locked in a pitcher's duel until the clock struck 10:30 p.m. Miles' homer in the bottom of the seventh had tied things up. On July the 26th, 1963, undoubtedly having enough players on hand was a problem also for Neely's Bend, who forfeited to Ray Batts as only 8 of their members of the team showed up for the game on Saturday, July the 19th. But Jamie Tillman tossed a 3-hitter that day as Batts went over Randall Phillips 13-1. Ronnie Bargatze had 4 RBI, and Duke Shackelford had a double and home run. Other games that Sunday saw Franklin shut out Smyrna 3-0, and Nolensville wallop Neely's Bend 16-1 as Gene Smith held his opponents to 5 hits. 2 days later, there was a 1-hitter pitch for Mayo's Sausage over Madison Amusement 15-0 by someone named White, who I don't know the first name of, and someone will be able to correct me on that. And the next night, catcher Hubert Spears hit the game's only home run as Madison Amusement won over Smyrna at Goodlettsville 9-4. On August the 1st, the Nashville Banner reported that Jamie Tillman, with a 7-0 record for Ray Batts, had signed with the Boston Red Sox and was to report in the spring to Winston-Salem. Tillman had previously signed with Pittsburgh and played in Batavia, New York, and Kingsport, Tennessee, but was released in the spring of 1963. And then on August the 3rd, Billy Griggs threw a no-hitter for Lipscomb against Smyrna as his team won 6-0 after losing the night before to Ray Batts 7-4. The winners were without the services of Jamie Tillman and Ronnie Bargatze, who were visiting in Washington. On August the 7th, Ray Batts, at 18-5, beat Lipscomb 8-1 to clinch at least a tie for the league championship, as Duke Shackelford gave up only 3 hits while fanning 13, and Jimmy Ferguson had 4 hits and 4 trips to the plate. The Randall Phillips team had dropped 9 of 12 games since winning its first 8, due to the loss of those players who went back to Clarksville. And on August the 12th, 1963, along with a photo of Jimmy Ferguson holding up both hands to signify the 10 home runs he has hit for Ray Batts after signing with the Boston Red Sox. Now earlier, about 5 weeks earlier, in his July the 6th sidelines column in the Nashville Banner, sports writer Edgar Allen asked the question, "Wonder why some pro scout hasn't signed young Jimmy Ferguson of Batts Furniture in the Tri-State League? The ex-Antioch All-Nashvillian has fine speed and excellent power, as his 8 homers in 12 games attest, and he also has a strong arm." Well, someone listened. I'm guessing it's George Digby, who signed a lot of Nashville players for the Boston Red Sox. And then the Nashville Banner published the final Tri-State League standings for the 1963 season, and they stood like this. Ray Batts at 19-5, Mayo's Sausage at 18-5, Lipscomb at 15-8, Nolensville at 13-8, Smyrna 11-11, Randall Phillips 11 wins and 12 losses, Franklin 7 wins and 16 losses, Madison Amusement at 6-17, and Neely's Bend won 3 games while losing 20. Smyrna forfeited some of the games when they could not field a team with more than 7 batters. And Corky Hartman of Batts won the batting title with a .455 average, with Ferguson just behind with .444 for second place. And Ferguson led the league with 40 hits, 30 runs, and 37 RBI. Tillman won 8 games and lost none while giving up only 7 earned runs. Well, that's kind of a synopsis of 1963 City League history. It was a great league. My dad was too old, I think, to play in it and had started traveling for a living. He had played in the City League, which ran concurrently with the Tri-State League. Both leagues were a member of the AABC, so they would play in a playoff to send a representative as the Tennessee State champion. And I'll have more on that at another time. But once again, thanks for listening in. I hope you had a good Christmas holiday as much as anything. And as we move into 2023, be looking for more stories. And if you have a suggestion, if you have a comment, if you want to correct me on something, I take criticism real well, especially corrections. You can email me at 262downright@gmail.com. And I want to close by saying one more thing. On Sunday, January the 15th, the Nashville Old Timers Baseball Association will be holding its 85th annual banquet with Brian Jordan, a former Major League Baseball star, and also played 3 years with the Atlanta Falcons as the guest speaker. You can purchase tickets at otbaseball.com, or you can contact me or contact another Old Timers member. Tickets will be available beginning on Wednesday morning, where we can actually meet you with your ticket, but they're already available to purchase online or to make a donation to our scholarship or general funds. We're always grateful for that. And we are a 501(c) nonprofit organization. Once again, thank you. I hope you'll listen in again soon.